excusing her until after I brought it up in open court. So if your issue is the open court issue, it's not accurate.
That is the issue we're raising, Your Honor.
Well, it's not accurate, because I brought it up in open court. I told you folks that she, in fact, had called in ill, and it was my intent to excuse her. I did it in open court.
Very well, Your Honor. Our
My
position...
bailiff is, let me see, my bailiff has no authority to excuse a juror. She can only notify me of the condition of a juror. I'm the one who excused the juror after I brought it up to counsel in open court. Take it up on appeal if you don't like it, but I think I complied expressly with the open court rule.
Can I just put a few more sentences on the record, Your Honor?
You may.
Your Honor, my recollection of yesterday morning was we came in and we were informed that she had persistent medical problems and she couldn't get out of bed this morning. We had never heard of her medical problems before. That was the first that we'd heard of it. It's our position that she was excused, not in open court, without a bone club analysis, and we're moving for mistrial.
Let me suggest, I did it in open court. She had been lupus, right? She has systemic lupus. She had been struggling through it the entire trial. There were a number of days where she had difficulty getting to trial. There was no reason to bring it up until finally she simply couldn't come in, and she had no indication of when she would be able to come in. I was notified of that by Terry. After Terry notified me of that, I brought it up in open court and said, the woman is sick. I intend to excuse her. I then told Terry, after I brought it up in open court, that the juror was excused. I think that there was no bone club analysis needed because I handled the matter in open court. You got anything else this morning?
We had one brief issue, Your Honor.
What?
We can pick up now or after we rest, but it relates to the exhibits, and since we're going to likely rest this morning, we went through your clerk Gary's list last night, and we had just one area of disagreement that I wanted to get clear. It was exhibits 70, 78, and 79. They were during the testimony of Shannon Monahan, and the court will recall that one of them was a PowerPoint with two photos that Ms. Richardson introduced of the gym, the front desk area, and according to our notes, that was admitted. And then the other was the diagram sheet.
What was the exhibit number?
78 was that. And then the other one was 79, but I think the whole remember, which is the diagram she drew that
Right.
we believe was admitted for illustrative, but the clerk doesn't have that down at all, and so.
I have it. I don't, are you suggesting it could be illustrative?
Well, our understanding was that it had been admitted for illustrative, and that's what our record
Well,
said.
that's-
We wanted to make sure that
All
was.
right, that was my intent. It was drawn, it was illustrative of her testimony. I assume there's no objection to illustrative uses since you diagrammed it in front of the jury.
Correct.
And then the other one, I think, was admitted, which was whatever I just said, 78, I believe, which was a.
You know, I don't show anything on 78, it's photos.
There's two photos of the gem.
I don't think there was any objection to it, but I didn't indicate that there was any offer either way.
We would like to offer it then, I think.
Any objection?
What else?
No objection to 78.
Admitted. Anything else?
So we have a few issues we want to address before the defense case, but we could do that. I think we'll have time to do that, so we can go ahead and get started if the court would like this morning.
Highlight the issues for me so I can be thinking about it.
We need to readdress just a brief area of Dr. Waymack's testimony relating to our understanding that counsel also intends to bring in evidence about antidepressant medications, which were several years earlier. We don't believe that is relevant, so that was the area we wanted to clarify with the court.
Your Honor, it's already come out through the toxicologist that.
Counsel, it's admitted.
Thank you, Your
It
Honor.
will be admitted. Anything else?
No, Your Honor, but could I have?
Just a second, I'm actually asking the
Sorry,
state.
Your
He
Honor.
said there were some other issues.
And the only other thing I'd put in the record is Mr. Allen informed me they're not calling Captain Anderson regarding the
they're
impeachment of Mr. Twitchell, so I think that's off our.
Is that right?
That's correct, Your Honor. I told Ms. Karlstrom that, and,
Okay, I read that on the way home yesterday.
yeah. Do you think now I should call him, Your Honor?
I'm not going to tell you what to do, counsel. I only rule on it when you tell me you are or you're not.
All advice is welcome, Your Honor, especially from someone with your experience and depth of knowledge.
There'll be a couple of issues with regard to substituting in exhibits. There are a couple that the court had asked us to shrink down, and we are doing that.
All right. You mean there were poster board ones you're going to do 8 by 10?
Correct. We're also going to substitute the autopsy photos with glossies as opposed to color copies. And we are going to have a motion on a couple of exhibits that were marked as illustrative that we would like to propose be made substantive.
Now we'll do it that way.
Okay.
Is that it, then?
That's it.
Mr. Allen, you have something?
Yes, just that we proposed to the state that we call Detective Pavlovic instead of Detective Anderson on the issue of the authenticity and the introduction of 3 photographs, which we attempted to introduce through Detective Johnson. And I believe, has the state agreed to that?
What are the photos?
They're of the search of the Pietz condominium and show the bathtub with a bottle of Drano next to the
I
bathtub.
thought we'd already dealt with that.
No,
Didn't
we-
it already come out?
Well, we weren't able
Or
to get...
was it because he said, I don't recognize it?
Right, and he didn't have a photo log, so we weren't
Right,
able to get
okay,
it in
I
through
remember.
him.
Is there going to be any objection to it?
And I'll show the...
We don't have an objection to it as long as there's no self-serving hearsay about what the Drano was used for. And we would note that it
I'm sorry, you
easily,
said no objection?
we have no objection to the photos
Okay.
being authenticated through Detective Pavlovich. There's no reason why it can't be done on his cross this morning. We'll be calling him. If they want to call him separately, they can.
Can you just do it then, counsel?
We can, Your Honor, and we wanted to bring up perhaps one other issue
Yes, sir.
that I could testify on.
Okay.
If we call.
But we will object to any self-serving hearsay regarding the Drano,
I'm not quite sure what they're referring to.
I'm not sure either, and
what it was for.
So I think that's pretty obvious, so I don't think I have to ask the detective that.
Drano could be used for a lot of things, but self-serving hearsay is just hearsay.
Yes, it is.
Who's objecting to hearsay?
Yes.
All right, well, he's
I just
not
don't want the
bringing it in.
question asked.
What
So,
else?
And just so the court knows, scheduling-wise, our first witness, we discussed this yesterday, is Dr. Waymack, and we've scheduled her for 1:30.
Thank you, counsel. Okay, what else?
Just that I need about a short 2-minute break before we start with the jury.
Right now,
Yes, before we start, once we finish with all the motions.
I think we're done.
Thank you.
And your first witness will be?
Sergeant McNab.
Just take this for a reminder on your cell phone or turn it off.
Now, my recollection is we've already heard from him at least once, right? So he's already under oath.
Correct.
All right. You understand, when you leave the courtroom, you don't have to stay under oath, it's just when you're here.
Yes.
This is not for the record. I actually had a witness complain to me once that I'd never released them from their oath. And they,
Bound to tell the truth?
this was about a year later, and they thought they had been under oath the whole time. His wife was very appreciative. He was. You okay?
Ready, Your Honor.
All right, bring a jury in. Please be seated. Call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. The state recalls Sergeant Tony McNab to the stand.
Have a seat. You're already on the road.
Thank you, sir.
Just so we're all clear, state your name again, please, if you would.
Anthony McNab.
Sergeant McNab, we've heard some testimony about phone records in this case pertaining to several phones, but Nicole Pietz's phones. I want to ask you some questions about that. Did you, at some point in the investigation, go through Nicole Pietz's phone records and determine who all had been calling her in the days after she had gone missing, starting late night, the 28th, forward?
Yes, I did.
How did you go about doing that?
Well, anybody that was involved in the investigation, we had a phone number for. I could just plug him into a chart. Any unknown numbers, I just placed cold calls to them.
And did you manage to figure out who all the callers were that were calling into Nicole Pietz's phone during that time period?
Yes, I did.
And other than calls from the defendant's actual phone number, were there any calls, other calls from the defendant himself?
No.
Were there any calls coming into Nicole Pietz's phone during that time period that were associated with members of the defendant's family, the Pietz family?
Yes, there were. There was 4 of them.
4 of them, and can you tell us who those were from?
There was 2 from his mother, 1 from his father, and 1 from his sister.
And can you tell us their names, if you would?
Julie Pietz is his mother, Martin Pietz is his father, and Lauren Pietz is the sister.
And do you know, or did you write down when the calls came in from Julie Pietz?
Both of those came in on the 30th. One was at 10:31 in the morning, the other one was at 12:34.
I'm going to show you our sergeant. Sergeant McNab, we heard some testimony last week regarding some voicemails that came into Nicole Pietz's phone, and I put up on the screen the beginning of Exhibit 85. Can you step down, if you would, and indicate to me whether there are calls or voicemails that came in at approximate times that you say there were calls from Julie Pietz? I believe you said the first one was what?
This one right here,
Okay, and that's January 30th at?
10:34 hours.
Okay. And what's the other one that's the approximate time Julie Pietz called
It
in?
was this one. The call record showed it was 12:34, and that voicemail shows 12:36.
And if you could just stay there for a moment, you said there was also a call that came into Nicole's phone from Martin Pietz Sr., is that
Yes.
right? And when did that call come in?
2:43 in the afternoon, which would be 14:43 hours.
On what day?
Well, the 30th as well.
Any voicemails associated with that call on Exhibit 85?
No, does not appear to be.
And how about, you said his sister, and I'm sorry, what was her name?
Lauren,
What time did that call come in?
it was 20:56 in the evening, so it would be 8:56.
And is there any voicemail associated with that call?
I can't see the bottom of those, the last 5 calls, voicemails.
Just one moment, Sergeant. Pavlovic, can you figure out when we can? Oh, how about that? Can you
Oh, there
say
we
now,
go.
Sergeant?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Is there any voicemail associated with that call from Lauren Pietz?
No, there's not.
Okay. And Sergeant McNab, those phone numbers, you can take a seat again if you'd like. From the Pietz family members, did they all share the same area code?
Yes, they all had the 360 area code.
And have you reviewed calls into Nicole Pietz's other cell phone, her personal cell phone, to determine whether there were any calls from Pietz family members to that phone?
Yes, I have.
And were there any?
No.
I want to move to a slightly different topic now and take you back to the day that you responded when Ms. Pietz's body was located. And I want to talk about some evidence items that were recovered. I'm putting up in front of the jury what's been admitted as State's Exhibit 22, and I believe you testified about this in your prior testimony. Can you just remind us again what we're seeing here?
Could you move that back a little bit, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
And if you need to step down, feel free to step down, Sergeant.
Okay.
What are we looking at here again?
That's the scene where her body was found. We're looking at 144th Street off at Des Moines Memorial Drive.
And I want to ask you some questions about some sort of trash type items that were collected at that scene. Do you recall packaging items from that scene, such as candy wrapper, beer cans, cigarettes?
Yes.
And do you know, without referring to an evidence record, what item numbers those would be?
Yes.
Okay. I want to ask first, was there a candy wrapper collected at the scene?
Yes.
And do you remember what item number that was?
It would be AAM2.
Okay. And would you mind stepping down and showing us on the diagram where the candy wrapper was in relation? And can you also just show us again where Ms. Pietz's body is referenced on that?
Her body's right here.
Can you stand on this side just so you don't block those jurors? Thank you.
Her body's right here, and this is where the candy wrapper is found.
Okay. And were there two Old English beer cans also recovered from that area?
Yes, there was.
Do you remember the item numbers for those?
It was AAM3 and 6.
And where were those located?
3 is right up here at the top of the cul-de-sac, and 6 is down here.
And was there a Marlboro cigarette package also recovered?
Yes.
What was that item number?
AAM5
Where was that?
was right there.
And from being there, any idea about how far that area towards the road is from where the body was?
From where the cigarettes were found?
Correct.
Well, you're looking over 100 feet. I mean, there's a scale here, so I guess I could measure it.
That's okay. And lastly, was there a Kraft cheese can collected?
Yes, there was.
And what was that item number?
AAM 4,
And can you point out where that was recovered as well?
right up here.
Thank you, Sergeant. You can retake your seat. At this time, I would re-offer the photographs that Mr. Curry testified about, exhibits 100 through 107. They were conditionally admitted, and I would now offer them again.
No objection. Sorry, no objection. Admitted.
Thank you, Sergeant. I don't have any additional questions for you.
Ross?
Sergeant McNab, you testified about a phone call from Martin Pietz Sr. and a phone call from Lauren Pietz that you identified as incoming calls on Nicole's BlackBerry phone.
Yes.
There were no voicemails left that were associated with those particular phone numbers.
Not that I found, no.
And you don't know who actually placed those phone calls.
No, I didn't.
Nothing further.
You may step down. All right, next witness.
State calls Detective Jake Pavlovic. Recalls.
You're already under oath. Yes, sir. I should say, you're still under oath.
Detective, before you moved into major crimes and actually became a detective, did you work as a patrol officer?
I did from 1994 when I transferred here up until 1998 when I transferred into the street crime unit but stayed at the same precinct.
And is the area where Nicole's body found part of the area that you patrolled?
Yes, Des Moines Memorial Drive there, just off the map to the right. That's the border between SeaTac and Burien. Burien and SeaTac are both one of our contract cities, and we cover those areas out of Precinct 4, which is located in Burien.
Okay. With regard to that cul-de-sac area and the sort of wooded area around there, in your experience in dealing with that area, what kind of traffic does it get, or what type of people are around it, or what did you encounter while you patrolled around there?
It's a busy area. Des Moines Memorial Drive is the major north-south thoroughfare for that part of the area. And then to get over to downtown Burien along First Avenue South, there's only about 3 main roads that go through there. 144th is one of those. So it gets a lot of vehicle traffic going back and forth between there. Des Moines itself is very busy. A lot of foot traffic down there as well. SeaTac Park is located just about a block and a half away. So you have a lot of people going to the park all the time. There's sometimes people that will camp there. A lot of foot traffic going back and forth between Burien and SeaTac. There's a grocery store right there just on 140. I'm sorry. There's a
I was dipping into my cough drops.
a lot of vehicle traffic and foot traffic in that area. There's a grocery store on South 144th Street in Des Moines, the 757 Mini Mart. They get a lot of traffic. There's a bar right across the street. There's a self-storage area right there. Up until the time the trailer court was still there, he had a lot of foot traffic then. That was in the process of being demolished in 2006.
Okay.
Just a lot of people walking through there. We get calls for people dumping trash there, people pulling over and throwing stuff out of their car in that cul-de-sac.
Now, that cul-de-sac, we previously had testimony that it was not lit at night. That's a dead-end road, basically, is that right? Until you turn onto the private drive?
It does. It goes into a private drive that led back into the trailer court, which is now a parking area for the area.
Would there be any reason for someone to come up Des Moines Memorial Drive and go down South 144th to get to that cul-de-sac? To get through to any place else?
It's not a thoroughfare to Burien. It dead ends in there.
I want to ask you about the defendant and Nicole's condominium in Linwood compared to the carport outside their condominium. Have you been out to that condo?
Yes, I have on several occasions.
Can you describe or estimate in about the number of feet, how far it is from the door of their condo to the carport?
Their condominium unit is situated in the middle of the building in which it's constructed. Going from the front door and out to where the carport area is approximately 30 feet.
State's Exhibit 128, representation.
I'm going to hand you what's been marked State's Exhibit 128. Could you take a look at that and tell us if you recognize it, and if so, how?
I do. This is a Google Maps image of the Pietz condo and the carport that's in front of it.
Does that appear to you to be an accurate depiction from overhead of the condo as it relates to the carport?
Yes, it is.
I'd offer, was it 128? Could you check for that?
128.
I'd offer 128.
Could I have a second, Your Honor?
You may.
No objection, Your Honor.
Admitted.
Except we would ask that it be limited for illustrative purposes since it has writing on here.
Can I see it? What's that?
Well, Your Honor, could you wait until after I finish my cross-examination before you make a ruling? Thank you.
At this point. Is that all, counsel?
Detective, on Exhibit 128, which is now up on the screen, the red thumbtack indicates the carport. Is that correct?
Correct. That's the carport structure.
And the yellow thumbtack indicates the condominium.
That's the condominium.
And is this the pathway to the carport?
It is. It's a walkway there.
Anything else?
Yes. Detective, we heard testimony earlier about a cell tower that hit in Auburn on January 20th. Do you know how far that cell tower is from the Auburn 24-hour fitness gym?
Approximately 1.4 miles driving distance.
And when did you take over as lead detective in this case?
In September of 2010.
When you became lead detective, did you have to become familiar with the entire investigation that had led up to that point?
Yes, I did.
And in becoming familiar with that, are you aware of any contact between the defendant and the King County Sheriff's Office detectives about this case after February of 2006?
Your Honor, we renew our earlier objection. Thank you.
The objection's overruled.
Are you aware of any contact between the defendant and detectives after February of 2006?
Nothing between that date and the date of the arrest.
We also heard a little bit of testimony about the finding of Nicole's body and whether there was media coverage. Can you tell us a little bit about, at a murder scene, what steps are taken to keep people away from it, including reporters?
On any homicide scene, particularly outdoor scenes where containment is obviously not as easy as an indoor scene, we'll try to make an outer perimeter as large as possible. We'll do that with crime scene tape, blocking the road at some point. We will oftentimes station a uniform marked vehicle there with the emergency lights going to close the road so there's no vehicular traffic allowed as well. So we do our best to isolate those scenes from public view as much as possible.
Okay. Now, there was testimony about the fact that Nicole was found nude. Can you talk a little bit about holdback information and why it's important?
Your Honor, may I have word here?
You may.
You weren't a detective on this case back in 2006 when Nicole's body was found, were you?
No, I was working on other homicides at the time.
You weren't at the scene in 2006 when her body was found?
No, I was not physically there.
And you didn't have anything to do in this case with whether information was shared or not shared, did you?
Not initially, no.
Your Honor, with that, I would object. There's no good foundation here. He doesn't have background to talk about this.
He's talking about policy of the Major Crimes Unit detectives with regard to homicides.
He can talk about policy, and you've already done your cross-examination on that policy to show that he didn't have any personal knowledge. But policy's acceptable. They may or may not have followed policy on a given date.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Can you talk about policies with regard to holdback information and what that is?
Holdback information, as we use it, is information that we keep to ourselves that we believe only a suspect or a person who has direct knowledge of the crime would be aware of. That can take many examples. For instance, if we have a case where the victim was shot several times, we might only release the fact that the victim was shot. We will not say how many times that victim was shot because only the person who shot them would theoretically know that. In this case, one of the key factors, obviously, was the fact the body was found naked. We would not release that information to the media or the public.
Your Honor, I'm going to object. He's talking about what...
Just sustained your objection.
I would ask you to tell the jury to disregard that.
Disregard, he has no knowledge of this case.
Apologize, Your Honor.
Okay, Detective,
They can certainly call someone who does have knowledge, but this is not that witness.
did you have an opportunity to try to explore what the media coverage was of this case at the time the body was found?
I did.
And in that exploration, did you find any reference to the fact that Nicole was found naked?
Your Honor, I'm going to object. The state gave us no notice that they would call this witness for that purpose this morning. We certainly should have had the opportunity to talk to him before he took the stand. We'd ask that we recess right now and give us the opportunity to interview him on this before we go any further.
I thought that we had given notice of that. We gave him a list yesterday. If I didn't, it was my
Can the
error.
jury return to the jury room? Regardless of what we do, we should not be discussing this in front of the jury. Mr. Allen, for future reference, if it comes up again, I would appreciate it. You say, just, Your Honor, there's something we need to take up outside the presence of the jury.
I apologize,
We
Your Honor.
know that sidebars, we don't think we can do sidebars anymore. So anytime we get into this because of this bone club, which counsel was nice enough to remind me about again this morning, it makes it more difficult to take up matters without sidebars. And so, but we know we're not supposed to be in front of the jury discussing and complaining about discovery and other issues like that. So for the future, simply say, Judge, there's something we need to talk about outside the presence of the jury.
Noted, Your Honor.
And I would suggest to, there's a brand new law review article on Bone Club,
Thank you, Your
written
Honor.
by Judge Ellington, if you're interested, in the University of Washington Law Review. Just came out. I'm up to speed on Bone Club. All right, so what's the issue?
Your Honor, we were never told that Detective Pavlovic was going to testify regarding his research on media coverage back in 2006. I assume this is something he did like very recently in the
I
last
don't
few
know
days.
when he did it, but counsel?
I don't know that I would call it research. He talked to the PIO for
PIO.
The Public Information Officer for the Sheriff's Department, and he
Yeah.
went back through what articles and web coverage he could find of this. And if the court will recall, when Detective Anderson was on the stand, Mr. Allen, in one of his cross-examination questions, stated as fact that there were helicopters and that there were broadcasts of a naked body. Absolutely no foundation for that whatsoever. This is to counter that. They
Your
would
Honor.
not release that information.
I don't remember saying that there were helicopters. I remember there was discussion about were there helicopters, was information about the body disseminated, and could my client have heard it over the media. I don't remember there being specific statements that it was out there.
The first question.
I simply say I don't remember,
Okay.
counsel.
Your Honor, I did not say that there were helicopters. I asked if there could have been, or something like that. It was an inquiry. Your Honor, I need to determine what research Detective Pavlovic did here, or whether he relied on somebody else's research. He said he talked to, I guess PIO is Public Information Officer,
That's what I just established.
which sounds to me like hearsay. But also,
Could be.
whether there's a foundation here where he should be able to say that, depending on how much of a search they did do. And
All right, counsel, hold on. Did you do this inquiry on your own, or did you get this information from somebody else?
A combination of both, Your Honor, my own research and speaking to the PIO, now the sheriff. He was the PIO at the time.
All right, well, counsel, at least part of that sounds like hearsay. It's asking the current sheriff what he did to investigate, and what his memory is of what the media information contained.
Well, I think that it's more, if it's hearsay by omission, that being that there would have been no release of this information. But apart from that, I think what Detective Pavlovich did on his own
Well,
is a
the
separate issue.
suggests the absence of information is not hearsay.
Right.
However, someone doing the research and coming in and saying, I've established that there was an absence of information, is hearsay.
Okay. Then,
So if someone actually took the time to go back, review the media releases, and is going to tell us what was in those media releases, that's substantive evidence. It's offered for the truth of the matter asserted. If the parent's not here, it's hearsay.
okay. Then Detective Pavlovich should be able to testify to his own work looking for articles and coverage.
So what did you do? What did you do? Looking for articles or coverage?
Go ahead.
Just tell us right now. Otherwise, he's going to take you out in the hall and ask you the same question.
I got onto the websites for Como, Cairo, and King and researched all articles for Nicole Pietz in February of 2006. I found none that mentioned her being naked. There were no written articles for the 6th. The articles I found were dated the 7th, the next day, but they had no mention of her being naked, so I believe it was reasonable to assume there wouldn't have been anything on the 6th. Talking to the sheriff, he keeps his own file of releases he gives to the press, and he told me that those files did not say she was naked. His releases only indicated a body was found.
Any other questions, counsel?
well, I do. So did you find any mention on the King, Cairo, or Como websites from February 6th, 2006?
No, all articles were dated on the 7th.
Okay, so by that token, would you accept the possibility, or do you know, let me ask it a different way. Do you know, are you saying that there were no broadcasts, I'm talking now not print media, but broadcast media, are you saying there were no broadcasts on the 6th regarding the locating Nicole Pietz's body?
I couldn't find any.
Okay, that doesn't mean there weren't, though.
I couldn't find any is all I can tell you.
Okay, and you heard Detective Anderson's testimony and saw his report where David Pietz indicated that he had heard it on the news on the 6th, right?
No, Detective Anderson, to my recollection, you were questioning him about could that information have gotten out?
Well, let me put it another way. You were aware that Mr. Pietz went home and was expecting Detective Anderson to be there.
He'd received phone calls from either Anderson or Snohomish County that they were coming.
Your Honor, can I just take a second here?
Sure.
Detective Pavlovic, do you recall me reading into court to Detective Anderson from his follow-up? I believe we have this in evidence,
Why
but
don't you just hand it up to him, counsel, rather than having him remember what you read off a certain document in court? I can't remember what you read off a document report. I can't.
This is
I don't
February
have the
6,
stuff down.
2006, at 20:38 hours, or 8:38. Could you read that paragraph to yourself?
I've read it.
Okay, what did Detective Anderson say David Pietz said about hearing any news about finding a body?
That a body had been found. No mention of naked.
Well, no, I'm not asking that. Did he say he heard it on the news?
He did.
Okay, do you think that if back then that Detective Anderson at the time would know whether or not there was any information regarding a body found in Burien on the news?
Well, the part of his testimony I heard, he wasn't clear.
Okay, do you think that Detective Anderson, as a trained investigator, would be interested in David Pietz saying something such as, I heard it on the news, if Detective Anderson believed it hadn't been on the news that day?
I think later on in his follow-up that becomes clear when he notes Mr. Pietz's question about the naked body. So yes would be their answer to that question.
Well, assume that David Pietz heard this on the news, as he said on February 6th. The fact that you can't find any mention in the websites in 2013 doesn't mean that it wasn't on the news that day, does it?
For what? I'm not clear what the question is.
Well,
Is that an objection?
I didn't know, I'm not exactly sure what we're doing at this point.
well, maybe we're talking apples and oranges, but
It sounds to me that he's saying you went out on the websites to see what was on the websites. I don't think we've established that everything that goes out on the radio, in fact, necessarily ends up on the website.
well,
Is that the point you're getting at?
that's my point, because I thought he
Why don't you
said,
make the point rather than say it?
I thought he said that there was nothing on the websites on February 6th showing that there was any mention of a body being found. Nothing about, I didn't ask about nude. I just said anything on the websites about a body being
That's what he
found.
testified to.
Right,
And
he
your
couldn't find-
client is claiming you heard it over the radio?
Right, that he heard it, well, he heard it in the news.
Well,
So it'd be-
hearing it in the news isn't reading it in the news. I
Yeah,
presume
well, it would
hearing
be-
it would be
right.
you heard it on TV or you heard it on the radio.
Right. So he heard it on the electronic media, it would be the radio. And, Your Honor, my point is that I don't believe that he can testify to this. He doesn't have a foundation to testify that there was nothing on the news back in 2006. And therefore, ergo, he can't say that there was nothing about a nude body in 2006. He just doesn't know.
Well, he can testify that he's researched the websites and there was nothing on the websites. That certainly leaves your cross-examination that the lack of information on the websites does not foreclose necessarily that something went out on the radio, unless he knows that everything that's on the radio gets covered in the websites. And that, I presume, would be something you'd get from each and every one of the media outlets. But his knowledge is limited to what was contained in the electronic websites. He can testify to that.
Well, Your Honor, I would object to that because the conclusion to be drawn is, because there's nothing on the websites now, that there wasn't anything broadcast over the air, and I don't believe that's a proper conclusion that can be
No,
drawn.
that's a cross-examination, which you've just adroitly brought up, and you may bring up in front of the jury. He's simply establishing that your client likely would not have seen it on any website because it wasn't there. That does not foreclose, based on the testimony I've heard so far, that your client's testimony that he may have heard it over, or his statement to police, that he may have heard it over the radio. I haven't heard anything that would foreclose that inference.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Right, I think we need to be clear, though, that he never said to the police, I heard she was nude over the radio.
Well,
He never
Counsel, he says, I heard it.
He heard there was a body.
Counsel, you're getting the argument. The only issue with this witness is that he go out and look at websites to determine if there's anything on the 6th or 7th concerning a nude body that was on those sites.
Right.
His testimony is, I looked as best I could and couldn't find him. He's not going to testify to what the current sheriff did at the time. If you want to call the sheriff, that's a different issue. But at this point, all he can say is he looked at the websites and nothing was there.
Okay.
Period. All right, let's get the jury back in. Anything else, counsel?
Your Honor, I just need to find Detective Anderson's report, which I believe is an exhibit.
He might use it. Yeah, if he's intending to impeach Detective Pavlovic with Detective Anderson's report, I would think that would be helpful.
Well, I would ask that we wait until...
You know what? You address that to me, because I haven't looked at the report yet. So let's not get into an argument between the two.
I'm not
No, just
arguing
be
with
quiet.
him. I was,
Be quiet. You're done. You can find out Dr. Anderson's report. Bring the jury. You got it, counsel.
Maybe 45.
No, 45 is just photos of Carla.
Okay,
Captain Anderson, 44 maybe.
44.
Yeah. Is that it?
Yes, sir.
All right. Mr. Allen, you may have your seat back there. You can go back to your chair.
I'm going.
Okay. Be seated, please. You may continue, counsel.
to look at various news. There was release of information about Nicole's body being nude on the day that it was found or the day after.
Yes, I did.
And what did you find?
I found no articles that mentioned her body being found naked, only that a body had been found.
And were those articles dated February 6th and February 7th of 2006?
February 7th.
Did you have a chance to approach the defendant outside his workplace at some point last year?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Did you have a chance to approach the defendant at his workplace sometime last year?
Yes, I did, on the morning of March 21st, 2012,
And what was your intent at that time?
to speak to Mr. Pietz about the case involving Nicole and to place him under arrest.
And was anybody with you?
Detective Raphael Crenshaw.
Where did you encounter him?
About 8:15 that morning, we saw Mr. Pietz pull into the parking lot of the Chase Bank where he was employed at the time and met him in the parking lot as he was walking to the back door of the bank.
And did you say something to him when you approached him?
I did. I introduced myself. I had never met him before. Told him that I was the detective that was now in charge of the case. I introduced Detective Crenshaw, and then I told him I had some great news about Nicole's case. I wanted to share it with him.
And what was his response?
Not right now. I have to get my bank branch open. Can we talk later, I think is what he said.
Thank you. I have nothing else.
Ross?
Yes, Your Honor. Detective, did you actually write a report for that day, March 21, 2012?
I did, and I brought a copy with me.
Okay. Would you please take a look at 8:15 a.m. on that date?
I'm there?
Okay. You have Mr. Pietz's response in quotes, don't you?
Yes, I do.
So that would be more accurate than, I mean, when a detective puts something in quotes, that means that you're claiming that you got pretty much what the person said, right?
That's exactly what he said.
Okay. And you told him words to the effect that you have some great news that you'd like to share with him. Do you have a minute, right?
I did.
And he responded, quote, I really have to get my branch open. We open soon. Do you see him saying that?
Correct.
Okay. You replied, quote, I would really like to talk to you about what we learned. Right? That's in quotes.
That's correct.
He responded, I have to get open. I take it there might be a word there. Can we talk later today? Do you see that?
At 8:15 that morning, that's correct.
Okay. And the point you make in your report, I guess, is that the bank doesn't open till 9 a.m.
That's correct.
Are you aware that there's a procedure at most banks that when a manager opens the banks, there has to be another employee witnessing the opening?
Objection, facts not in evidence.
I'm asking generally. You can say no, he's not aware of it.
Well, you're assuming that, are you aware, you're telling us what the policy is.
Okay, well, let me talk about
So you
this.
could simply say, are you aware of any policy as to number of people in the bank?
Well, let me ask with regard to the Chase Bank. Are you aware of any policies where a manager opens the bank, there has to be a second employee watching from some distance?
Objection, facts not
In evidence, he can call a witness.
I'm asking if he's aware.
The jury will not, unless he says there is such a policy, the jury will not consider the question as establishing that such a policy exists. But he may ask his question as to whether, what his knowledge is concerning Chase policies.
Are you aware of that?
8%.
I have no idea.
Okay. Are you aware of bank policies with other banks like that? No idea.
No idea.
And so you're not aware of any policy if the person opening the bank doesn't do so, that the person watching has to call 911. You're not aware of that policy either.
objection.
Counsel
Counsel
is
Same
testifying.
thing, and the counsel is not a witness here. To the extent that this witness says, I'm aware of no such policy, then the question and the answer have no value to establish anything. But he can ask his question.
Okay, Detective, I think you told us, and I wrote this down carefully, that you checked back in 2006 as to what, well, let me put it another way. Your checking back to 2006, that was done yesterday?
2 days ago.
2 days ago. And that was probably in response to my questions to Detective Captain Anderson, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And you just told the jury that you couldn't find any articles mentioning a nude body on the 6th or the 7th of February, right?
That's correct. The articles I was able to find limited made no mention of the body being naked.
Well, I would expect that there were no articles on February 6th.
I would expect not, given the time of day.
And when you talk about articles, you're talking about the print media.
I looked for print and video. I only found print.
Okay, well, that was going to be my next question. When you say articles, we're talking about newspaper articles, yes?
Yes, sir.
When we're talking about radio stations, that would be the electronic media, right?
That's correct.
And in terms of your research, and this research you did, this was, that you're talking about right now, this was a web search, right?
Yes, it was.
Google?
No, I went directly to the big three websites, basically, Como, Cairo, and King, because Cairo also covers radio as well.
Okay.
Cairo and Como.
And you found no mention at all of a body being found on February 6th? There just wasn't any mention on the websites?
Hold on just a second.
Let me rephrase it.
That's,
The
the question is, did they find the body? Did he find the articles about it on that date? So
Okay. You found no mention on the websites dated February 6th, 2006, about a body being found?
The ones I found were all dated February 7th.
Okay, but those were all print media?
Yes, they were.
Okay. Even on the 7th, you found no electronic media articles?
I did not.
And I think we already established that you were not involved in this case until, was it 2010?
September of 2010.
Are you aware that when you testified earlier about contacts that David Pietz may or may not have had with King County, you reviewed other detectives' follow-up, right? I mean, you reviewed the records in the case, right?
I did, and I spoke with them directly as well.
Okay, but I'm talking about you being the case detective. You review other detectives' records, right?
I do.
And you rely on that, don't you?
To a certain extent, it depends on what information I'm trying to rely upon. I'll try to go back to the source if I can.
So you're aware that Detective Anderson, or at least now you're aware that Detective Anderson, in his follow-up report on February 6th, 2006, wrote that...
Objection. This is being offered as a hearsay.
What's that?
This is being offered for hearsay purposes.
It's already been testified to.
Counsel, the issue is contact. If the reports indicate that there was contact, I will...
I'm handing you what's been...
Is that the issue, counsel? There's indications of contact?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may, I'll allow.
I'm handing you what's been previously marked as Defendant's Exhibit number 44. I believe it's Defendant's. Is that a copy of Detective Anderson's follow-up report?
Yes, it is.
And that report has contacts that stretch over a period of months. Is that right?
Yes, it does.
Would you please refer, and I believe I opened it to that page, Monday, February 6, 2006. I'm sorry, the bait stamp is 149. Do you have that in front of you?
I do.
Okay. And Detective Anderson had contact with David Pietz at approximately 8:28 p.m. on February 6, 2006. Is that right?
Yes, he did.
And Detective Anderson, in his report, wrote that at this point, Martin had only heard on the news that...
This is being offered for hearsay. This had nothing to do with contact.
That's the same. You can call the detective.
Well,
The issue here is, was there a report of contact with your client?
okay.
And what your client related to him in that contact is hearsay. Now, if you're trying to establish something else, you actually got double leather hearsay. You can call the person, you can call Anderson back if you want to.
Your Honor, we've already brought this out through Anderson.
Well, you can go back.
But I should be able to, maybe we want to take this up outside.
You can deal with it with the jury can recall what the testimony was.
Okay. Back in 2006, whether or not something was on the electronic media could have been determined at that point in time. Would you agree with that?
Sounds reasonable, yes.
King County Police could go talk to station managers who might have a recording of what went out that day, right?
We would typically go through our PIO or Public Information Officer for that information, but yes, we could.
Or you could talk to reporters, or your PIO could talk to reporters.
They would do it for us, yes.
So, based on your knowledge of investigations, if a detective is told something by a suspect that appears to be blatantly erroneous, that's something that a detective would presumably follow up with at or near that time, correct?
It would depend on the nature of the error. You would want to follow up on leads, yes. Without you being more specific, I can't really give you a yes or no answer.
Well, I'm not sure I can be. But you would agree that at this point in 2013, there's no way that you can determine what went out on the electronic media on February 6th, 2006 by doing a website search on various electronic media organizations in Seattle. You can't determine it now.
All I can tell you is what I found just from my own limited research, which was nothing.
Okay. I'd like to ask you some questions about the exhibit that we just put up there with regard to the location of the condo and the carport. Could you please put that up on the TV again for me, please?
Are you talking about Exhibit 128?
It was the one that was just put up there. For some reason, I don't seem to have that number.
It's up behind the video.
It's 128, isn't it? Councilors, there's the hard copy right there. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, I am. Can I take
Does that say 128 on it?
It says 128. Your Honor, can I use your pointer?
The answer is yes, after I find it.
Detective, with regard to Exhibit 128, somebody wrote Pete's condo here and put a little stick pin. Is that right?
I did.
Isn't it a fact that the Pete's condo was to the right of that? Was
We'll find that pointer really doesn't work very well there. Is it working on that screen at all?
Not really.
Yeah,
The
it
Pete's
works
condo-
better off a non-reflective surface.
The Pete's condo was to the right, over where the O was, where it says condo.
Where that marker is where the front door to the condo approximately is at. You have to go down the walkway, down the stairs, and to the front door of the condo.
Okay. There was no information in this case that you're aware of that said that the Pete's had any use of the carport, was there?
His assigned parking stall is right at the edge of that carport, and then his garage is right next to that on the right edge of the screen.
Well, exactly. His garage is to the right over here where I'm pointing, isn't that right?
Just on the end, yes.
Okay, so you would agree that the mark here with a stick pin and so forth with carport really doesn't add anything to this case, does it?
It shows where the carport is in relation to the front door of the condo.
Of course, that's not where the Pete's parked their car.
Right at the edge of the carport is, I believe, their assigned parking spot 203.
And that would be in this garage to the right here.
No, that's the garage. The assigned spot is just to the left of the garage.
Okay, but they also have a garage stall. You aware of that?
Yes, the door opens right out to the parking lot there.
Okay, and that would be to the right here. Yes?
It's on the screen.
Well, is it the garage that I'm pointing to here?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so in terms of distance, if we're going to take the distance from what you say is the front door of the Pete's condo to the assigned garage that the Pete's has, well, let me go back a step. You said from the Pete's condo to the carport was, did you say 30 feet?
Depending on which route you took, if you went on the grass or stayed on the sidewalk, between 25 and 30 feet.
Okay, but if we're going from the Pete's condo to the Pete's garage, we're talking about something greater than 30 feet.
75 to 90 feet, depending on which way you went.
Thank you. I may have a couple more follow-up questions. And can you tell us how you determined which garage stall the Pietz's owned or used?
On March 21st, 2012, post-arrest, we served a search warrant at that condo, and I was there that afternoon.
And isn't it correct that their garage is out of this, it's part of this building that I'm pointing to here, but it's out of the picture, it's off the picture?
I think it's right on the edge of the picture. It's the second or third door in.
And also, isn't it a fact that their assigned parking space is to the far side of the garage, to the right here on the picture?
You're talking about the garage or the parking space?
I said the parking space. In other words, let me go back a step. So the Pietz's had a garage as part of their condo, right?
Correct.
They also had an assigned parking space.
Number 203, as I recall.
Okay. Number 203 was to the right of this garage and out of the picture, wasn't it?
I believe it was to the left.
when I talked to you previously about your attempt to discern through the station websites the mention of the body being 2006, and I talked about the electronic media, I'm talking not only about radio stations, I'm talking about TV stations. You didn't find anything mentioning a body being found on February 6th, 2006, on your website searches, did you?
I didn't find any articles dated February 6th.
Okay, and you didn't find any mention that this was covered by the radio stations or by the TV stations belonging to those local media that you mentioned?
No, I found nothing like that at all.
And that's for the 6th and the 7th?
For the 6th,
And for the 7th, you found articles?
I did.
And the articles would be probably PI and Seattle Times?
I found them on the King and Cairo websites. I believe, I can't remember who wrote them, but that's the websites I found them on.
Okay. Thank you. We're going to call back Detective Pavlovic in our case.
You may step down. Counsel?
I'll get this.
Card next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. State calls Amber Cowart.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm your testimony in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Be seated.
Good morning. Good morning. State your name, and why don't you spell both your first and last names if you would.
Amber Cowart, Amber, Cowart as in Tom.
What do you do for a living, Ms. Cowart?
I'm a financial advisor for Merrill Lynch.
What did you do for a living back in 2012?
I was a financial advisor for JP Morgan Chase.
And did you work at Chase Bank at least some of the time?
Yes,
Did you work with a David Pietz, the defendant?
yes.
What was your job at Chase Bank during the period that you worked with Mr. Pietz there?
So I was the financial advisor. I actually was assigned to two branches, downtown Kirkland, where Dave worked, as well as Kingsgate. And I would help clients with financial planning, investments.
How many days a week would you work at the branch that the defendant worked at?
I was assigned there every Monday and Thursday. However, if we had client appointments or if I needed to be there on an additional day, I would.
How long did you work at Chase Bank while the defendant was there?
I started in October 2010. So it was about almost 3 years. 3 years.
And when you worked with the defendant at the bank, did you become aware at some point that his wife had been killed? How did that come about?
Just in getting to know people within the branch, talking about who they were, who their family was. It was important for me to integrate myself because the bankers at the branch would actually send referrals over to me. So in having conversation with Dave one day, he had mentioned that his wife had been murdered.
How did it come up that you even brought up the subject of his wife, or did you bring it up?
So we were actually getting ready to leave the branch. We were standing by the front doors, and I had said, do you have a significant other or anyone in your life? And he said, no. He said, I was married, but she was murdered in 2006. And I said, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry for your loss. And he kind of shrugged his shoulders and said, well, I'm over it, which was kind of weird, but.
Your Honor, I would object to her editorializing us that be stricken.
Ms. Cowart, previous to being a financial advisor, did you have a job or do work that involved appraisal of jewelry in some regard?
So I owned a consignment store in the state of Arizona before I moved to Washington, and I had a dealer's license. We would buy and sell gold at the consignment store.
And how long had you done that up to the point that you came up to Washington to work in the financial world?
Yes, my background has been in finances since 1998. However, I had a passion for helping people save and make money and decided that I wanted to open a consignment store. So I did so. I worked in my consignment store for about a year and then started with Chase in Arizona and transferred up to Washington with the company.
When you worked with a defendant, did he know that you had some background in that area?
Yes, we talked about it.
At some point, did he ask you to do something regarding that background that you had?
He did. We talked about the markets and different things, and at one point, gold was at its highest price, and it had come up in conversation. And David said that he had a bracelet that he had taken to a pawn shop, and he thought that the guy was trying to rip him off because he offered him like $150. And we both kind of laughed, and I said, well, gold being at its highest price, there's no way that it could be worth $150. And I had explained to him that, most pawn shops are only going to give you the meltdown value of the gold, not necessarily, the value of the bracelet itself, just because that's how it works when people say we buy gold. So I told him, I said, that definitely doesn't sound right. If you want me to take a look at it, I'd be happy to tell you what I think it's worth, and then at least you'll have an idea of what the spot price is.
And let me ask you this before we ask more questions about this. Do you recall approximately when that was that he talked to you about this bracelet?
October 2011.
And before you actually saw it, did he describe it any more than saying a bracelet at that point?
No.
So you said you offered to look at it.
Yeah.
Did he take you up on that?
He did. So we talked, I believe it was I think it was a Thursday, and the following Monday he had brought in the bracelet and asked me to take a look at it for him.
And what happened as you did that? Describe it.
So it was a tennis bracelet, so I had the bracelet in my hand and was just kind of looking at it and had told him, yeah, I can definitely give you a value. We had cubicles set up in the branch, so he wasn't, he was kind of leaning on the cubicle, looking down at me, and I had actually taken the bracelet and put it around my wrist, just to kind of get an idea of, the length of it, and he started laughing, and, as if somebody had said a joke, and he goes, oh my gosh, he's like, that's so weird. And I looked up and I said, what? And he goes, you're wearing my dead wife's bracelet. And I immediately took it off. I said, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I really didn't mean to offend you. I apologize. I didn't realize it belonged to her. And he just laughed and said, no. He's like, that's okay. It's just weird.
Did he say anything to you at that time about how she had gotten it or who had given it to her or anything like that?
So we had chatted a little bit. He said that he had bought it for her. And, again, we talked about the gentleman who wanted to give him $150. He said, I paid more for it, back in the day when gold wasn't as valuable as it is today. But he said it wasn't that expensive. I'm kind of a cheapskate. But I know it's worth more than $150.
Did you agree then at that point to take it with you and look at it for him?
Yes,
Did you take it home that day?
yes.
I want to show you what's been admitted as previously as State's Exhibit 6. Have you just take a look at this in the plastic bag, if you would, Ms. Howard, and tell me if you recognize that as the bracelet that you looked at for the defendant.
Yes.
And while you still have that item in front of you, I just want you to talk a little bit about what you did. So did you take it home and try to figure out some things for him?
I did. I took it home. I have an assay testing kit. It's basically what dealers or people in the gold business will use to test whether you have 14 karat gold or whatever the carat is. I also had a diamond weight chart so that I could measure the diamonds and exclude the weight of the diamonds from the actual gold in the bracelet. And I actually had written it on 2 sticky notes. The first one I had written down had some calculations and scratch marks, so I didn't want to give that back to him because it was probably going to be pretty confusing. And so I wrote a new fresh sticky note just with the values of what I had assessed.
And how long did it take you to do this? Or I guess I should ask, did you at some point bring back the bracelet to the defendant?
I did. I would say it was probably about a week.
And you said you made some sticky notes. Did you bring in the sticky notes or a sticky note at the same time you returned the bracelet to him?
Yes.
And did you just give him back one sticky note, do you recall?
Yes.
And did you have any conversation further with him when you came back in with the bracelet?
No, the way that the branch was set up, Dave's desk was a bit on the other side of the branch, so I think he was on the phone at the time, so I walked over and I placed the bracelet down with the sticky note.
And did you explain what you'd done or what was on the sticky note to him?
Not at that time because he was busy. I figured if he had questions that he would ask me, it really didn't come up in conversation after that.
Do you know what he did with the note of the bracelet after you returned it to him?
I did not know what he had done. I only knew that I had left it with him at the branch.
State's Exhibit 129 is marked for identification.
Thank you. Do you have scissors?
That's fine. Thank you.
Ms. Coward, I'm going to open what's been marked as State's Exhibit 129 and have you take a look at what's in here. Just take a look at that and tell me if you recognize that.
Yes.
And what is that?
That's the note I left him?
And does that contain the information that you provided to him?
Yes.
I would offer 129, Your Honor.
No objection.
Admitted.
And can you just indicate what information you provided on there specifically, Ms. Coward?
So the total was 0.53 ounces or 15.1 grams at 14 carat gold. The diamond's weight approximately was 3.25 carats. They were 0.05 cuts, brilliant full cuts, and I calculated 65 of them. The gold value with a date 10/6, which was 10/6/2011, I had estimated at $507 based on the spot price for gold that day.
And did you, in fact, write $507 on there?
Yes, I did.
Ms. Howard, I want to move forward in time a little bit and ask if at some point you became aware that the defendant had been arrested.
Yes.
Did you end up at some point contacting police about this bracelet and this note?
Yes.
And why did you do that, or how did
Your
you do
Honor,
that?
irrelevant.
I'm going to sustain the objection.
Okay. What made you contact police?
Same objection, Your Honor.
Your Honor, I think I have to draw some connection as to why she suddenly contacted police. I'm a little...
She contacted the police.
All right, I'll ask it differently. After you learned the defendant had been arrested, did you contact the police?
Yes,
And did you do that by phone or in person?
by phone,
And did you end up talking to a detective?
yes,
And did you share information with him about what you've just testified to regarding this bracelet and this appraisal that you did?
yes,
Did you end up giving an actual statement, a tape-recorded statement at some point?
yes, I
Your
did.
Honor, objection irrelevant.
Counsel, we've got lots and lots of statements here that,
But I don't see where the state's going with this, Your Honor.
well, I don't know, but the fact that she gave a statement is admissible, as is the fact that all of the other witnesses, not all of them, but many of the witnesses we've heard from also gave statements.
Thank you, Your Honor.
After you gave a statement, did you make attempts to locate the note that you had filled out and left with the defendant at the bank?
Yes, I did.
What did you do to try to find that note?
So I had spoken with the detective, and obviously, he had asked me if I had the initial note that I had written, and I said, well, I can see if I can go look for it, but probably not. I went home that evening. I went back into my essay kit just to see if I had left it on a sticky pad, and I had not left it there. The day prior, because I believe that was a Friday, the day prior, the assistant manager and new acting manager for the branch were we're putting some of the contents of Dave's desk into boxes. So I thought, well, maybe they would have seen something if it was still there at the office, since I did give it to him at the branch.
Your Honor, at this point, I'm going to object. It's not responsive to the question.
I'm asking her how she found the note.
Ask another question.
I will. Ms. Coward, I just want to get into, I don't want you to get into what anybody told you, but did you actually speak to someone at the bank who was packaging up the defendant's things?
Yes, so I called Carla.
Your Honor, asked and answered.
Ask your next question.
Who did you speak to?
Carla Hansen.
Thank you. Did you end up then talking to the detective again after that?
Yes,
Was it the same detective you'd spoken to before?
yes.
I don't have any additional questions for you. Thank you.
Ross?
Yes, in terms of your work that you did to appraise the bracelet and discussions about the bracelet, this occurred in October 2011. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you. No further questions.
You may step down. Our next witness. Come forward and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Be seated.
Good morning. Hi. State both your first and last name and spell them both for us.
Carla Hansen, K-A-R-L-A-H-A-N-S-E-N.
And where do you work, Ms. Hansen?
Right now I'm working at, new job, Washington Federal.
What do you do for them?
I'm a loan officer.
Did you previously at some point work at Chase Bank?
Yes, I did.
And did you work there at the same time as the defendant, David Pietz?
Yes, I did.
What did you do at Chase Bank?
I was the assistant manager at the Kirkland branch.
Assistant manager at the Kirkland?
Kirkland branch.
And what years or time period did you have that job?
I opened the branch, which I believe we opened it in November of '05. and my last day there was July 25th of 2012.
Of what, I'm sorry, what year?
2012.
Thank you. At some point when working at the bank at the same time as the defendant, did you become aware that his wife had been killed?
Yes.
And did the defendant ever talk to you about whether he'd been a suspect?
Yes.
What did he say?
He told me at some point that he had been their, one of their suspects, but they had nothing on him.
At some point, did you learn that he had been arrested?
Yes.
Did you have anything to do with taking care of his belongings that were at the bank?
Yes.
Can you describe that?
I believe he was arrested on Wednesday. I think it was Thursday. It might have been Friday. I went into work, and as the manager there at the time, it was my job to go through and make sure that any bank things were handled. So I went through all of his drawers and his desk. Bank stuff went on one side and personal things went on the other side. And when it was all done, I boxed all the personal things up.
Let me just have you describe a little bit. So I take it from your answer that he had a desk assigned to him?
Correct.
And that just typical dress, any other cabinets or anything assigned to him besides that?
There was a desk. It had 3 or 4 drawers here, and there was a credenza, but I don't think there was anything in the credenza.
And did you go through that entire desk of his?
Yes.
And I think you said you separated bank items from personal items?
Correct.
Is there any other area in the bank that had items of the defendants that you also went through?
Back in our lunchroom, we each had our own locker that we could keep whatever we wanted, as well as in the furniture covers, anything like that, or we could keep personal items.
Was everybody assigned their own, like was it a personal locker for a certain person?
Yeah, we each had our own. We didn't keep locks on them or anything.
And did you package up anything that was in his locker as well?
Yes, I did. I packaged up both the locker and personal items in the restroom and all of it.
Do you recall approximately how many boxes, if there was more than one, of items that you packaged up between the personal and the bank stuff of the defendants?
The personal items, I think it might have been 3 boxes, possibly 4.
And did you do that all in that one day that you were describing?
Yes.
At some point, did you recall getting a phone call from a fellow employee, Amber Cowart?
Yes.
Did she ask you to look for something?
She did. I believe that was Friday. And she asked me to look for a small piece of notepaper that just had some random numbers. I believe she said it would say CT on some of it. She said it wasn't a big piece, just a small piece of scratch paper.
And when you talked to her, when she asked you this, had you already completed the boxing up of the defendant's items?
Yes.
And did you recall seeing such a thing?
I did not recall, because I wasn't really paying any attention to what I was looking at. If it was personal, it went one way, and bank the other way.
And at some point, did you end up finding or becoming aware of this item she was having you look for?
I went to work on Saturday morning, and I went back through the paperwork out of the desk, and I did find the note page.
And when you say you went back through the paperwork, is that bank stuff in, or?
The personal things.
Okay. I want to show you what's been admitted as Exhibit 129, Ms. Hansen. Do you recognize this?
Yep.
Is
That
that
was a
the
piece of
item that you believe you located in response to Ms. Cowart?
Yes.
Did you at some point get contacted by a police detective regarding this item?
I did. Saturday morning, he came in.
And did you eventually, did you hand it over to him when he came over on Saturday morning?
I handed it to him, but he did not accept it, so I just put it on the, like the desk right there.
And do you know if at some point later a police came and collected that?
He came back the following Monday.
When you were going through and boxing up the defendant's personal items, did you come across a bracelet?
I did.
And where was that in the places that you were boxing up from?
In his locker back in the lunchroom.
And is that something that you ended up being asked about by police?
In a roundabout way, yeah.
Is that something that ultimately the police also collected from the items that you had boxed up?
Yes.
I'm going to show you what's been admitted as Exhibit 6. Have you take a look at this. Does this look like the bracelet that you
Yes.
saw in the defendant's locker?
Yes.
Any other questions for you?
Ross?
No, Your Honor. No, Your Honor, no cross-examination, but we are asking that she remain under subpoena. We may call her in our case in chief.
You may step.
Thank you.
Come forward. Have a seat. You're already under oath.
Yes, sir.
Good morning. Can you just state your
Hi.
name again for everybody?
Mike Mellis.
And Detective Miller, I want to talk to you about a different part of the investigation today, and that is, did you receive a call at some point from a woman named Amber Howard?
Yes, it was, I remember the exact date, but 3 days after a significant event in the investigation.
And was that the arrest of the defendant?
Yes,
Okay. And did you end up speaking to her about something?
I did. She called and asked to meet. She told me who she worked for, and we missed her because I guess she was a part-time employee there, wasn't there all the time, so I didn't even heard her name yet.
And did you end up actually meeting with her and talking to her?
I did.
As a result of your conversation with her, did you at some point end up going to the Chase Bank where the defendant had previously worked?
I did. I went there the following day after meeting Ms. Coward. I believe I met her on Friday, and the first time I went to the bank was, went inside the bank at least, was on the following Saturday.
Okay, so the day after you had first talked to her, you went to the bank.
Yes.
And why did you go to the bank that day?
Ms. Coward told me a lengthy story about jewelry appraisal that she was asked to do by the defendant, and she told me the story of how that came about.
Counsel, it's not being offered the truth right now, and we just heard the testimony.
So without getting into, you don't have to go into detail about what she said, though. Just why don't you indicate what were you trying to accomplish when you went to the bank?
I'd gone there to put my eyes on a Post-it note that Ms. Coward indicated I would find there at the bank.
And why was that Post-it note important to you?
Well, to me, it would corroborate the statement she gave me the day before. She mentioned
Sustained.
Move to strike.
I'm sorry, I'm trying.
Haven't gotten anything yet. He says corroboration. But jury, the issue here, counsel, is that he collected some items, and the
I
items are
understand.
now in evidence.
I understand, but I would like to ask him why it was significant enough to go to the bank, why he was going to the bank to collect this note and this other item. So I would like to ask that question. I can advise him not to get into corroboration.
Counsel, the issue is why the note is important, why the bracelet is important, ultimately, is a thing you can argue in closing argument, and the jury can consider it in their deliberations.
All right, that's fine.
The issue for this witness is, was he following up, and did he collect certain items and place them in evidence? Why he thinks those items are important is really a jury question.
When you went to the bank on Saturday, did you go to retrieve this Post-it note?
I did.
And did you end up seeing the Post-it note?
Yes.
And did you also become aware of another item that you wished to collect?
Yes.
What was that?
It was a bracelet.
And did you ultimately collect both the note and the bracelet?
I ultimately took possession of them 2 days later on the following Monday morning.
And what did you have to do in order to go take possession of those items?
Apply for and obtain a search warrant and coordinate with the management to allow me access back into the bank building and into a locked storage room there.
And do you recall what day it is specifically, as far as day of the week, that you would have gone in and collected the items?
Following Monday morning.
And what did you look through to get these items?
There were some boxes, I guess you call them banker's boxes, or reams of paper boxes. And inside one of those boxes was a cloth or nylon pouch or bag, and inside that bag was this bracelet.
I'm going to show you Exhibit 6. Is this the bracelet that you recovered that day?
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm going to show you what's been admitted as Exhibit 129, and ask if this is the Post-it note that you recovered that day as well.
Yes, this is the original Post-it note.
Your Honor, I'm going to ask for a few moments to publish these actually to the jury and let them pass through them, if I could, at this time. That has not been done previously.
Anything else, counsel?
No, Your Honor, I don't have any other questions.
Rod?
No cross-examination, Your Honor.
Can you step down?
You may, Your Honor.
Your Honor, the state rests.
State having rested, I understand that you have a witness prior to 1:30?
We may, Your Honor, we have to check on the call. We may have a short witness. We need to take that.
We'll take a morning recess. State's rested, it's now the defense decision whether to call any witnesses.